Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagen. We are back here in studio for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the Gold Standard and Iowa Conservative Podcasts. Got John Hendrickson and myself. We have a lot planned for today. So, John, are you ready to roll?
I am, yeah.
Good. Well, we've got the microphone it's on way too loud, so I got to turn that down. I think we continue to have all kinds of technical problems, but I think we're gonna get through it. So,
that's right, yeah.
Okay. First things first. We have a guest today.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to introduce our guest to those of you that have not made the switch to video on the ITR Live podcast, that you're still just listening on audio? We have had the gnome who has remained unnamed for the last year here. Today we have next to the gnome, now take it away.
Yeah, we have Herbert Hoover. And he's in the bobblehead form. So
we have bobblehead Herbert Hoover holding his cap.
Yep.
Next to the gnome. Now, the reason that we've invited President Hoover to join us today is this might be the gnome's last episode.
Yes.
And so I wanted to just take a moment. It's been a big year.
It
for
has.
The gnome.
Yeah.
He has been every episode.
It doesn't seem like it. It's gone by fast.
It doesn't. He's been manning his post right here, sitting in front of the soundboard, and he's for those of you that aren't on video, he's a cheerful gnome with a big white beard and a red cap, and the cap on it says America on it. So I was part of a team that won the gnome. It's the traveling prize at my church's trivia night.
It's a major award.
It is. It's significant. And so a year ago, I brought the traveling trophy. Nobody else in my team wanted to take the gnome with them, and so he has had a home here in Studio 130 for that year. And so this weekend we've got to go and try and defend the gnome and see if he can come back home for another year. So anyway, if not, President Hoover might be here all on his own on Monday. But either way, it's been a big year, and so the gnome, hopefully this is not goodbye, but if he's not here next week, we'll one way or the other, we'll give you an update.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Another departure that's happening this week is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell announced that he after the election will step down as leader, but will finish his term.
Yeah.
Were you sad about that, John?
No, I wasn't. No. I think he has whether you agree with him or not, he certainly will have a significant legacy as being a senator. And we were sort of talking about that this morning a little bit. And I think two areas that will be his most important legacy will be in the federal judiciary, and then also in the realm of stopping campaign finance reform legislation. And but he has been controversial, especially late with kind of going against conservatives, especially in regard to the funding over Ukraine and trying to tie that to border security and not really acting on border security. And one could even get into when he was majority leader in the Trump administration, did he and Speaker Paul Ryan do enough to help the Trump agenda even?
Yep. I agree with all of those things, John. I think without question he has been very consequential. I think he's been very effective, a tremendous fundraiser.
Yes, yep.
And here's where I come out, Mitch McConnell. Certainly there are times that he has disappointed conservatives. I believe that generally he was trying to work it all out because being a leader is difficult. Mm-hmm. When I say a legislative leader, is that you're trying to get 51 votes for, or in his case, or 60 for a filibuster, but you're trying to figure out where all of those folks land. And sometimes you just don't have the votes and you got to figure out a way around it or through it or whatever. And so I think sometimes it was trying to his take on how to navigate the political realities of it. I'm a little bit of a McConnell apologist, and I know that as a movement conservative, I'm not supposed to be. But there's one area in which I think he will deserve thanks from conservatives, is what he did to remake the federal judiciary. And specifically, this was the Merrick Garland nomination at the end of the Obama administration, of holding that until after the 2016 election. And it's not just the three Supreme Court justices that President Trump appointed, but just a host of federal judges from the circuit court level on down. When it came time to cash in political capital, is he wasn't afraid to do it and saw it all the way through. And it was tough. And I would put Senator Grassley in that, because he was chair of the Judiciary Committee at the time of that.
Yep, I agree.
He also stood strong. And the impact of having all of those new conservative judges from the Supreme Court on down is remarkable and will last far beyond, as I heard another podcast mentioned this morning, tax rates at the federal level are going to go up and down based on who's in control and this and that. And the political pendulum will swing. But the impact of having constitutional originalist judges on the court all the way down will last for generations in this country.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think that will be the win for which he is most remembered.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
yeah.
And judges are important to me. Maybe it's just because I'm a lawyer. I don't know, but it's
No,
very
you're
important to me.
absolutely right.
And I don't think, as much as we can be frustrated on those other things, John, I don't think we should. Let's not forget just how significant all of that really was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to put that in context, when Franklin Roosevelt was able to basically remake the court in his image, that had, it's still impacting constitutional law.
Yeah.
And it had a tremendous impact.
50 plus years.
Yes, yeah.
Of impact. And I don't know if it'll have quite that impact, but especially as we see more and more issues come before this court that represent radical departures from the norms in this country.
Yeah.
Having that court there as a backstop to that is going to prove invaluable time and again. So,
and I think you bring up an interesting perspective on the leadership aspect, because you have experience in that role as being a former leader yourself. And so I think sometimes it's I don't want to say if the right word is easy for us to kind of be critical, because, you're seeing Mike Johnson being the current speaker being criticized, and same with who was the one they just threw out?
Kevin
McCarthy. Yeah, McCarthy. And you there you have to, and I hate to say, because I don't want to sound like a liberal, but compromise has to be a product of the system to a certain extent.
Well, sure, but it's when you are the leader, one, you speak on behalf of, or a speaker of the House, or you speak on behalf of the entire caucus, or in D.C., the conference. And so you have to sort of speak in terms of what everyone wants to do.
Yes, yeah.
And that's difficult. And your job is to find consensus. And I don't even think compromise. Yes, sometimes it is that. What can we do? And how can we? And I know that sometimes conservatives like, hey, this is a bill that conservatives want. Put it on the floor and let's run it and roll them over. It doesn't work that way. You don't just get to roll over the people that are no votes.
Yeah.
There's times here and there that you have to push. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But by and large, it is a consensus-driven job, and that can be, I can tell you, can be a difficult spot for somebody that has strong opinions on things. But you are right. It's a difficult job. I think Mitch McConnell was very good at it. And the last thing is, let's not forget that, but for a last-minute knife in the back from John McCain, Mitch McConnell would have overturned Obamacare.
That's right. Yeah.
So, anyway, that's what I have to say on that. Is at a minimum, thank you, Mitch McConnell, for what you have done on remaking the federal judiciary, and we'll let history sort of be the judge on the rest. All right, a little bit of updates on what's going on in Iowa. First one, and I know this is one that you've sort of followed, John, but the state Senate passed a bill requiring E-Verify. And this has been a bill that's been around for a decade or more.
Yeah.
But they passed that again last night. We're recording on a Thursday, so on Wednesday night. But tell me about that. This is an issue that you're a little closer to than I am. So even though I've worked with this in the past.
I actually think this is a good thing that the Senate did. And basically what E-Verify does, and to just summarize it, it would require businesses to basically check to make sure that their employees are legally able to work in the United States. So it's in a sense to crack down on illegal immigration. And I think this is certainly a good step in terms of just the overall immigration policy. And I know some other states have done this as well. And, it's been criticized by those on the left and even libertarians, but I'm all supportive of E-Verify. I think it's just one tool that we can use to bring back some sanity within the immigration system.
This has been an issue for State Senator Julian Garrett for a long time.
Yes,
it's kind of been his number one issue. Maybe that's unfair to say that, but I know that he has been a proponent of this for a long time, back to when I served with him in the Iowa House. And he believes that a couple of quotes here that Julian Garrett, this is from the Des Moines Register, said the border is probably the number one issue he hears about. Well, that goes along with some of what we've been talking about, and the ITR Foundation poll.
Yes,
is that in that poll, immigration and the border was our number one issue, and largely supportive of what the governor has done with National Guard at the southern border. Interesting comment here, and I want your take, John. Senator Janice Weiner, Democrat from Iowa City, said if Iowa lawmakers are concerned about the border, they should contact their federal representatives and senators. Here's the quote. Ask them to pass the bipartisan law on immigration reform and the border that we has agreed to in Washington. That's the solution. It's a federal issue.
That's just a joke. I mean, we talked about the so-called compromise, which was not a compromise. It actually would have made this situation worse. And all that compromise was a disguise to get the Ukraine funding and funding for Israel through. And so I would disagree with her on that. And
she clearly got the talking points from the Biden administration.
Yes,
because that's what this is.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that Americans will see right through that.
Yes, yeah.
I don't look.
What?
The American people, they're look. They do. Do I expect every American voter to be an expert on policy? No. Mm-hmm. Do we expect them to understand the nuances of every bill and what goes? No, that's not reasonable. But they are smart, and they do pay attention.
Yeah.
And the border and immigration is an issue in which American people have an opinion, and they are informed on.
That's right.
And they all know the difference between not only the Republicans and the Democrats, but the Biden administration and what happened in the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And so, there's been criticism, well, why didn't Donald Trump build the wall? Well, okay, we talked about that with regard to McConnell and all that. But who's tearing it down?
Yes, yeah.
Joe Biden.
Yep.
Who is going to the Supreme Court for the right to cut down the border? Joe Biden. I don't think that instinctive understanding that the Biden administration is working to open the border and keep it open is going to be mitigated by insider DC swamp talk. Mm-hmm. The American people get this. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So, and frankly, contacting our federal representatives and senators isn't working, which is why the governor is having to be part of a multi-state effort with Governor Abbott down on the Texas border.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. People are concerned with this because I've been talking with a lot of people from back in Minnesota, and Governor Walz and the Democrat legislature there are basically considering making the state a sanctuary state, and people are livid. I mean, they are up in arms about this. And
did I see, was it Chicago or New York City that was going to back up on being a sanctuary city?
Yeah.
That they finally got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, kudos to Minnesota. I
Yeah.
mean, knock yourselves out, guys.
Yeah. And the other thing about what I like about E-Verify is that one problem when you have such a large influx of illegal immigration is it drives down wages, especially for the middle and lower classes. And so I know a lot of libertarians won't like to hear that, but that's what it does. And so this is actually it protects American jobs as well. So I think that's a good important point to think about.
Yep. Okay, I got another legislative issue here that we need to get to, John. Universal basic income. And I don't think we've talked about this enough. I know we have talked about it, but there's a bill moving through the legislature. It's a House bill, went through subcommittee, committee, and is now eligible for debate in the full Iowa House that would ban cities and counties from participating in universal basic income projects because it's happening here in central Iowa.
Yes, yep.
Polk County and a few of the suburban communities are in this. They call it uplift, but it is simply, it's old school welfare. Mm-hmm. It's just cutting checks to people.
Yeah.
And it is taking those funds that, and I get that they're trying to be cute and say it's one-time money that they're using for this, but let's be clear. It is taxpayer resources.
Yes.
To just fund basically a stipend for people. So this bill would ban that. And in my mind, this is a pretty simple thing. This is straight up socialism. And yet it is meeting resistance now in the Iowa House, is that apparently they do not have the support to move this bill forward. I want your take on that.
Yeah, well, I agree, first of all, that this is nothing but socialism. And we've seen these proposals even on the national level. Of course, Andrew Yang being the most famous one, and I've actually even seen some libertarians propose sort of a national income type program. But one, I think there needs to be a serious discussion in Iowa because this idea of local control is getting out of hand.
Well, and to back up for a minute, this idea is that we should let cities and counties do what they want.
Yeah.
Because they're independent in this local control idea, which is, in my mind, terribly overused. But that's the idea, is that somehow this is this sacrosanct idea that cities and counties should be left to their own devices no matter what.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue.
Yeah, and so I think we need to have that discussion because the idea that cities and counties can just do whatever they want is not the right argument. The other thing is going back to these programs is one lesson I think we learned from, kind of tying this back into leadership, looking at when Speaker Newt Gingrich forced President Clinton, to do welfare reform in the 1990s. What happened was you had a welfare system that was basically rewarding people for not working. The Republicans changed that, and of course a lot of governors changed that at the state level, like Tommy Thompson and Engler in Michigan. And the result was, requiring people to work actually eliminated more poverty than in a sense just cutting checks. And so this is just bad policy. Yeah. To begin with.
There's two reasons that the legislature should move full speed ahead to get rid of this. Is one, it's just bad. It's wealth redistribution. It's socialism. It's counterproductive. It's just not what. And this isn't about conservatism. This is just basic right of center free market stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Bill Clinton championed welfare reform back in the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's just basic. This is not how we deliver benefits.
No.
Okay. But then going beyond that, like you said, the local control argument, give me a break. If we're going to have these entitlement types of benefits are managed at the state and federal level. They are not managed at the local level.
Yeah.
And it's another example where the left can't get their policy objectives done at the state level or the federal level, so they're going to go take it to the local level.
Yeah.
They're going to stack your suburban city council with a bunch of liberals and start getting it done that way. And then guess what? It's insidious. It starts growing bigger and bigger, and pretty soon you've got a problem. They've done it with minimum wage.
Yes.
They do it with their environmental things. This is just how they chip away. And these are the situations where these conservatives in the legislature have got to wise up to this, and they have got to take action on these kinds of things, because it's not just about the Central Iowa Uplift program.
No.
It's much bigger than that, and it will be bigger than that. We know it will, because we've seen it time and again. They have to act on these things, and I'm going to go back to something I have said over and over. Local control is only ever asserted when they want to tax you more or take away your freedoms. Local control is never asserted in a way to stand up for the individual.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we need to remember that over and over. So, and if you want to get more technical about it, those cities and counties only exist because the state sanctioned it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they have the ability to manage their affairs if the legislature does not provide a framework for it. But it is absolutely up to the state as the sovereign to decide what they can and can't do on this issue.
Yeah.
There's nothing inappropriate about it.
Yeah. And you brought up another, I think those are excellent points. And you brought up another good point. And if what they're trying to do with this is basically import the failed ideology that has bankrupted states like California, New York, that's ruined Chicago, and we don't want that here in Iowa. And the other thing is, all these localities are complaining about, having to cut budgets. And I understand that they claim this is one-time funding. Well, what happens when that one-time funding goes away? Does that program go away? Or how are they going to finance this massive welfare entitlement when it becomes ongoing?
You know how they're going to fund it? They're going to turn and look for the state to fill the hole.
Yeah.
So the taxpayers are on the hook.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't pull the rug out from under these people. We've already made commitments to them. Give me a break.
Yeah.
It's their fault for making the commitment. They know exactly what they're doing here, John. So I really hope that that our legislature will and I'm still hopeful. I know they had the bill on the debate calendar, had to pull it off because they didn't have the support. I really hope that some folks will take a second look at this bill and get it done. Okay, so speaking of legislative stuff, I wanted to get to this article, John, on our last episode, but this was in the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and it asks an issue that I think is an important one. I'm going to broaden it a little bit from the scope of what was in the article, but the title of this is "What Will Be the Impact of National Issues on Iowa Legislative Races?" And so the idea is, okay, what most people pay attention to is the thematic issues: Trump versus Biden, the border, what's going on with China, what's going on with the national debt and taxes and abortion and those big issues. That's usually what drives people's consciousness about the political debate. So how much of that, when they work their way down the ballot to Iowa Senate, Iowa House, does that translate down the ballot? I think it's interesting, and I'm going to just start with this as a quote from University of Iowa political science professor Tim Hagel, who's great, who's really, really sharp. Sometimes the state legislative agenda can be an issue in particular districts, but quite often they're more likely to be driven, at least to a certain extent, by what's going on at the national level. I think that's right. So I want to get your take on this too, John. My perspective is that at the state level, there are occasionally issues that are high enough profile that they sort of sink in down ballot. But largely, people don't know what's going on at the state capitol. We've worked hard to inform them, but is that your perspective?
It is, and I'm not going to use example or specific examples, but I do have experience listening to a candidate forum for a state Senate race, and I won't use what district, but one of the candidates, when he was trying to address the issues, basically was just only talking about federal issues, nothing about what's going on at the state level. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're absolutely right. There is a disconnect, and sometimes these things overlap, but there's not a whole lot of, at least from that example, this person was getting their, in a sense, their talking points on various issues from national outlets. So they were talking about federal issues that not necessarily the legislature would have, jurisdiction over,
Right.
in those cases. So,
I guess my perspective on this is driven from my experience working on state legislative campaigns. I ran 6 of them myself, and was part of the broader House Republican caucus operation for multiple cycles. It is more common that you'll see some of those national issues brought into the campaign of, the Democrats love to try and tie legislative candidate to Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're just another Donald Trump or whatever. And I remember in my first race, he's just George Bush, and trying to tie, because at that 2008, George W. Bush wasn't particularly popular.
No.
So you actually see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I think I remember early on in my legislative career, somebody who I still trust, knows a lot about this process, said, Chris, votes don't matter when it comes to elections at the legislative. They don't matter. There's always an explanation. You can definitely explain away a no vote anytime, but votes don't matter. And legislators often, it's common. You get contacted on a bill and you think that everyone's paying attention. They're not. But I was just thinking here on some of the highest profile bills that were the most difficult for us to get done, at least during my time. The fetal heartbeat bill, the 2017 collective bargaining reform bill, judicial nominating reform in 2019. Those were very high profile bills. Fill the Capitol. We were told this is incredibly difficult. You're going to lose your majority over it. Never lost our majority. Collective bargaining bill, I don't believe made it into a single Democrat campaign piece. They did not campaign on that issue after trying to say that this was the end of the world. The judicial nominating reform bill did not make it into a single campaign piece at all. The fetal heartbeat bill, they did run that, but it did not impact. No one won or lost their seat because of that. In some of these races, it was Donald Trump's midterm or turnout. In fact, what was interesting, one of those ones, the judicial nominating reform bill, this is horrible. Iowans are going to revolt. They're going to rise up. It was actually the Democrats' actions on the Kavanaugh nomination that helped us save our majority in 2018, because it didn't look real good. And conservatives were demoralized and sitting on the sidelines. Yeah. And then when that all happened in September of 2018, all of a sudden, Republican enthusiasm went way up because they saw what the Democrats were doing, and we ended up holding our majority. I only say that is that I don't want to diminish the importance of the issues and doing right by the people of Iowa, but the idea that you're going to win or lose a majority or even your legislative race over an individual vote in the legislature is just incorrect. And both sides do it, but I know the Democrats are really good at it. If they don't have an issue, if they don't have a vote that you've taken one way or the other, they'll just make something up. Yeah. I've seen that time and again as well.
Yeah. And I think too, in terms of some of these national issues, I think especially in recent years, we've seen states having to take more proactive action. So, for example, we just talked about E-Verify. Immigration's a huge issue. And so the state legislature is taking some actions at the state level that can try to address the issue of illegal immigration. The same thing with both houses just passed the, in a sense, to have it more difficult for China to buy farmland to strengthen Iowa's laws. I mean, I think I remember the last election that had the legislative races. I remember some local ads where candidates addressing the issue of China. And so I think some of these national issues are filtering in, influencing state policy.
Absolutely.
And one I thought one of the best ads that Governor Reynolds had in her last election was one where she was walking out of the coffee shop and basically saying, saying what's going on in terms of the insanity of all the wokeness and all this agenda. And basically the governor is saying, Iowa is bringing some sanity back.
Yep.
And I think voters responded to that.
I do too. And if the rest of the country worked like Iowa does, we'd all be in a lot better place.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the message. I think this article, I mean, I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but talking about Democrats are going to run on abortion, absolutely. I think you'll see that, but that's going to be a national issue.
Yeah.
And they'll put an Iowa spin on it, but that is going to be a big part of their campaign.
That was interesting because remember the Des Moines mayor's race?
Yeah.
That seemed to focus on, at least the ads I saw.
It was a race to be who could be the farthest left on the issue of abortion.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's exactly right, up and down the ballot. Republicans to campaign on tax cuts in the economy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to, especially in Iowa, we've cut taxes, and the economy is doing better in Iowa than it is nationally.
It is, yeah.
But I think the economy is going to be an issue.
Oh, absolutely.
And absolutely. The other thing, too, and I think I'll wrap up with this because they touch on it, will presidential campaigns help or hurt Iowa candidates? I think it's hard to say until we know what sort of shape the presidential election takes. It is unquestionable that the last two times that we have had Donald Trump on the top of the ticket, Iowa Republicans at the legislative level have done very well. And I think the thing to watch here, which really is the most fundamental piece of the puzzle with the national issues and campaigns, is what does it do to turnout?
Yes.
And I can only speak to Iowa on this. Donald Trump has done good things to turn out in Iowa. Now, Joe Biden turned a lot of people out in 2020 across the country, much of it in response to President Trump. I don't know that that's going to be the case again this year. And you don't have to look a whole lot further than Joe Biden's approval rating. But that's the thing to watch in all of this. Take away the issues, the campaigns, the TV ads, what's happening with turnout. And then I don't want to diminish, that middle of the ground voter, but at least at this point, it seems like enthusiasm is on the side of Republicans over Democrats in this campaign, especially in Iowa.
I would agree. And just a quick story, because next week is Super Tuesday. And so I've been talking to a lot of people in Minnesota, and a lot of people have...
And is Minnesota a Super Tuesday state?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
March 5th. And a lot of people have told me that they're very excited and will be voting for the first time in a presidential primary.
Yeah.
And these people are all Trump supporters.
Yeah, a lot of that America First, and we've talked about it over and over, is the upper Midwest and in the Rust Belt states where that brand of conservatism has really resonated. And so that doesn't surprise me at all that that's going on there.
Yeah, and I think people are just tired of a lot of people fell for the lie that Joe Biden was going to be a centrist, Bill Clinton-style Democrat, and not only of his mental decline, but also his embrace of the radical left has really scared people.
Joe Biden has never been anything more than a standard issue 1970s style Democrat.
Yes, yeah.
Rank and file, gonna support whatever the party line is.
Yeah.
That's just who he is.
Yeah.
So you get what you get. And now I think as his mental faculties have declined, he's been run by the staff, which is sort of Obama retreads that are all far leftists.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could probably talk about that all day. So watch the enthusiasm factor. Watch the turnout factor. That's
key.
the one you really want to watch in these races. And time will tell. It's interesting. The filing period for to get on the ballot this fall is open right now.
Oh, that's right.
It opened on February 26th and runs through March 15th. There's really only 2 weeks. Today is leap day. Yeah. As we record, there's only 2 weeks left in the filing period. It's a week from tomorrow is the end of it. And then we'll know who the candidates are for the primary and then on down the line. So it's interesting to see. There's a couple of people that have already filed that I think were on retirement watch that clearly are now running. But there'll be legislative retirement, some that weren't expected. And we'll kind of recap all of that with a look at the Iowa House and Iowa Senate campaigns going forward. But anyway, it's an interesting thing to talk about that probably after the legislative session will give us something to talk about over the summer as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, John. Well, that's all the time we got today. So thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you, President Hoover. Noam, I'm going to do everything I can for him on Sunday.
I mean, good luck on
I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna do everything I can. We got a great team. It's just sometimes one of those things.
I hope in our next broadcast that he's back.
Here's my promise: if he comes back, we're naming him.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. But either way, I look forward to having President Hoover with us.
That's right.
And it's actually nice because he's reminding me every time I bump the table. I see his head go all over the place. So, all right. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget, if you're on audio, check us out on YouTube. Get subscribed over there as well. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.